It's about the person. And really to me it comes back to one word, dignity. When when we do stuff for other people that they have the capacity to do for themselves and we create dependency, we don't realize it, but what we're doing and what we're saying to that person is you're incapable, and we're actually degrading their dignity.
Welcome back to NeuroConversant Leadership, where we talk about effective communication and leadership, especially in the STEM workplace. I'm Jeremy Doran, and I love to help great engineers become great leaders. Today we have a special guest, Jacob Niemeyer. Jacob, welcome.
Hi, yeah, thank you for having me on, Jeremy.
Yeah, we're excited. Can you tell us all a little bit about what it is that you do?
Yeah, so I am the founder and executive director of a nonprofit NGO, NGO being non-governmental organization for those that aren't aware.
Thank you.
We work in Peru, bringing access to clean water to rural communities.
Great. And tell me about your organization.
Yeah, so Vera Aqua Vera Vita, it's Latin for true water, true life. And our mission is to tap into the physical and spiritual nature of water to empower people and communities in need in developing countries to generate clean water and sanitation solutions that bring true water, true life. And so for us, our approach is threefold. We implement WASH, that is water, sanitation, and hygiene solutions in rural communities that don't have those basic resources, don't have those basic systems in place. We then follow that through with solution specific training for these communities. As when we implement our solutions, we form decentralized, privatized systems that are self-sufficient, both economically, environmentally, and run by the people themselves. So we give them solution specific training to operate, maintain, and manage these solutions that we implement. We then follow that through with general water sanitation and hygiene education to the entire community, just to kind of open those doors for a greater practicing of the best management practices that we kind of take for granted here in the US and in the Western world and in developing countries and these rural communities. They don't realize sometimes the need for those things. And then we follow that through with the final kind of piece of our programmatic offering is we have mission trip opportunities and service opportunities for those to go abroad with us and serve those in need. But we've also then been able to develop some of that kind of culture of the service aspect of organization in our domestic operations with a program we've developed called the Care Package Program, where we gather groups together here locally and domestically to prepare gallon-sized Ziploc bags full of basic water, sanitation, hygiene materials. We then get these on shipping containers down to Peru and other countries as we grow to work in, and we deliver these one per person in every community that we serve as a means to kind of kickstart them and putting into practice some of the basic water, sanitation, hygiene, best management practices that we've educated them and trained them and taught them about. And so that is kind of a domestic to international bridge that we've developed. So yeah, the three programs: WASH, community development, education, and mission.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking about a community, in my mind, if it's about water, then I'm thinking of like small little villages. Is that the communities that you're dealing with, or are they something different?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. It's rural communities, oftentimes, vary in population, but from 200 up to 1,500 to 2,000 is kind of our target right now for these rural communities that are really the most impoverished, the most needy, most in desperate situation with lack of access to clean water.
And there are a lot of things going on in what you were describing, both from the technical aspect of getting the water clean, dealing with the government as an NGO, and dealing with the communities themselves.
Yep.
Let's start with the technical aspect. How technical is what you do?
Yeah, so you can think of consulting engineering, and that's actually my background. Prior to starting Vera Aqua Vera Vita, I worked for 6 years as a consulting engineer in the water and wastewater field here in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area, doing all sorts of projects for utilities, cities, municipalities, primarily conveyance, distribution systems, but also modeling, pumping, a lot of large diameter pipeline design as well. So using that background, that knowledge, that skill set, we bring that to bear in the work that we do now with Vera Aqua Vera Vita, in that we basically serve as consulting engineers for these communities on their behalf, pro bono, because they're not paying us. That's coming from our donors and our donor base that's helping support that labor cost. And we basically design these solutions for them, from data collection, doing water quality testing, to all the data collection that then goes into needing to build out a set of construction plans that can be built for these communities. And then we follow that through with construction management and construction phase services. So yeah, the whole spectrum, really. That's the technical piece we offer, and I think is one of our key differentiators. Is our skill set in that front.
So it sounds like there's a lot of data and a lot of technical aspects. How much of that is shared with the people in the communities, or how much do they need to know?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as you might have caught when I was mentioning our mission statement, I mentioned the word empower. That's extremely fundamental to what we do, Jeremy. It's at the very core. In fact, I'm utterly convinced through my many experiences that I've had in developing countries, and even before starting Vera Aqua Vera Vita, and was led to believe really that if we're not empowering these people, if we're not equipping them, and we're not putting the solutions in their hands, and they're not being the drivers of them, then they're not going to be sustainable. And the statistics back this up left and right. I've seen anecdotal proof of this as well. So for us, when you ask about data and information, how much is that shared with the community? Nearly all of it, right? We engage them in the process all along the way. So at the beginning, when we're just doing initial entry into the community, we do a comprehensive set of surveys to 3 distinct groups, or 3 distinct parties, in which from those surveys we gather all the information we need to know about the community, and then we use those surveys to feed a scorecard tool that we've developed to prioritize communities. So say we're looking at a collection of 5 communities that have been, presented to us or suggested to us by whether it be the regional government or another nonprofit NGO or a church or whatever it may be. And we want to be able to make sure we're serving these communities as efficiently and as effectively as possible, and being good stewards of our donors' dollars. So we've developed this scorecard tool that we use to evaluate these communities and prioritize them, and that all the information that feeds that scoring method comes from those surveys. And we look at 2 high-level categories: project success and project impact. And all of this is to engage them, to get their input. And one of the things that we're looking at is ownership, buy-in. Are they willing to take ownership of something that we bring to bear in the community? Because if not, then maybe our dollars are best spent elsewhere. It's not to say that community may not have a need, but we want to make sure we're putting it where it's going to be sustainable, right? And we can only know so much from these surveys, right? But we believe it's a pretty powerful and effective tool. But all along the way, we're engaging these people from day one. We enter the community with the surveys. Then once we have decided we're going to serve them, and in what order, we begin serving those communities. And in that process, we're looking at source water evaluation. And then say there's 2 to 3 viable sources. We make a recommendation on which one we think that we should do, but we ultimately let them choose. Again, ownership. We want to create that buy-in from them. That's that sweat equity piece, creating that ownership, that buy-in. And then we follow that through, like I said already, with the solution-specific training to help them operate, maintain, and manage their system. We help them form what we call a water system committee that has a structure such as like a board of directors, president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and then a various number of other members on that committee. And then we also help them vet and hire, as they wish us to, be involved as much as possible, an operator or 2 to operate and run the system. And all along the way, it's theirs. We're engaging them, and that's really the key to the sustainable piece that we're going for.
I love it. It is going back thousands of years, the saying, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach him to fish, feed them for a lifetime, but you're going the next step, not just teaching them, but forcing them to take ownership, or maybe forcing is a little too strong, but getting them to take ownership.
Strongly encouraging.
Yes.
Yes.
And, that is not just something that's applicable there. It's applicable in the workforce. You can just give people tasks to do, or you can give them ownership of projects, and they just develop so much more. So that's great that you're doing that. And then how different is it the way you communicate with the communities versus the NGO portion?
Meaning the government, so to speak?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously with the communities, there's oftentimes an intellectual and educational gap. So we have to keep that in mind and understanding our audience and the way we're communicating with them. But I mean, really, for the most part, I mean, we communicate the same sorts of information. It's just that the community itself has obviously a greater role to play in a grand scheme of things as far as actually the success of a project. The government has key roles along the way. I mean, we have to get permits and approvals and authorizations, but those are standard processes that, as an engineer in our team with our team of engineers, we know how to navigate those things. Now, as we're working with the government, is we have to get the right champions, the right supporters, those that really understand what we're trying to do and believe in our approach. And from that point forward, it becomes much smoother. But yeah, I mean, really, that would be kind of my quick and short answer to your question.
Great. And you talk about the fact that people in the community need to have ownership, and it seems like that's something that you check for ahead of time.
Oh, yeah.
And if they're not going to be committed to taking ownership, are there things that you do to help encourage that? It's really tough to motivate people. All you can do is kind of set the groundwork that's fertile for them to want to be motivated.
To answer your question, I'm glad you asked this, because I got an anecdote. I got a story for you that will just highlight our approach.
Perfect.
It maybe seem a little bit harsh, but honestly, if we really look at what we're trying to accomplish, it's necessary. And so it's actually from our first community we ever served, a community called Monte Castillo. Community of 7,000 people, by the way. It's the first community we ever served. Since then we've reduced the size of the communities that we're serving, but that one was just kind of a godsend, is what I like to say, is why we were even working in that community to begin with. But that being said, we had followed this approach. We had really a completed construction set of plans that were ready to go to construction. Actually, we're already under construction when we began the water system committee training. We formed the initial water system committee, and we have a training protocol and process that we follow to ensure this community was going to be ready to manage their system. But people weren't showing up for the trainings.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't coming. And they said, well, we know that you're almost done with construction. Can you just, turn on the water? And we're like, no. We want you to have clean water, but it needs to be yours. You need to take ownership of it. It needs to last. And we had to like 2 to 3 months. We had to delay. Construction was completely done. We were ready to commence operations. The system was ready, but the community was not coming to the training. So for 2 to 3 months, we had to basically incentivize them by withholding the turning on of the water, because they weren't pulling their end of the bargain, and it was a little tough. And they were, in the moment they were upset about that, but now in hindsight they understand why. It was, and proof is now in the pudding. 3 years post project after we implemented that solution, they've been fully operating. They have been taking full ownership, and it's like lighting a fire, right? Once you give people that, empowerment and equipping them, and you walk with them in solidarity until they're ready to run with it themselves in what we like to call subsidiarity, self-sufficient, self-functioning. They loved it. They understand so more profoundly why we had to do what we did. because now they're starting to see the fruits, like they're taking ownership, they're starting to invest in expansion in their system, improvement in other areas, and building of more infrastructure, all because we lit this fire in them. I think what we had to do, and it was successful, and grateful we haven't had to do that since, but that would be probably our same approach if we ran into that again.
Yeah, that took some fortitude to hang in there and
Yeah,
not just turn on the
good
water.
work. Yes.
But I'm sure there were lessons learned about getting their buy-in before doing the whole build-out.
Well, we thought we did, and because they went through the whole process of forming the committee, and they volunteered or they were nominated, and it was a really successful. That was our first time doing that, right? So for us, we thought it was a very successful process. There was a lot of engagement from the community, from the leaders in the community. So we're like, oh well, this is going to be a slam dunk as far as doing the training. I mean, everyone's geared up and ready to go, but I guess they weren't. So
well, you got them to the table.
Yeah.
Are there other things when you're dealing with people on your own team? What are your thoughts on motivation and what it takes to get people motivated?
Yeah, kind of the same mentality, Jeremy. Honestly, it's about the person, and really, to me, it comes back to one word: dignity. When we do stuff for other people that they have the capacity to do for themselves, and we create dependency, we don't realize it, but what we're doing and what we're saying to that person is you're incapable, and we're actually degrading their dignity. And so for me, that's externally and internally. It's that same mentality. It's that same approach. It's equip, empower, walk in solidarity with, train, educate, and let them run and fly. And they're going to fall and they're going to fail, but we're going to be there to come and be a support to them and help them get back up and encourage them to keep going. And that's how we learn, right? And that's how we really make a real lasting, sustainable organization internally, but also obviously with our operations externally.
That's great. I've never quite heard it referred to that way, as an issue of dignity. It's very easy as a manager when someone comes to you with a problem to just solve their problem. And it takes real leadership to let them work on it on their own and figure it out and be willing to let them make mistakes.
Yeah. And if I may add one other word to that, I'll use the Greek here. The Greek root is magnanimous, but magnanimity,
Yep.
Greatness. We want to unlock greatness in those that we're serving. That's why we have our approach so profoundly rooted in empowering and equipping them and honoring that dignity, because they have the capacity and have the potential. But we want to do that internally as well. And frankly, that's what we're called to. Like, I think as leaders, especially, but I think I'm not with this mentality that, leaders are for the few, or, many are called to be leaders is another thing you hear. I think everyone is called to be a leader. And what it means to be a leader is to unlock greatness in other people. And the only way you do that is by, first off, living to your fullest capacity and potential as a person. And then other people alongside you see that one, and they want that same thing. And then you help unlock that in them, right? That's greatness, is bringing that out of other people, right? Or said another way, servant leadership maybe. But that's what we want. And that's a world that I think, where everyone's flourishing, where humans are flourishing, is when greatness is unlocked, and dignity is honored in each person.
That would be a wonderful world. Let's hope we all get there. We need to start wrapping up.
Sure.
How can people reach out to either contact you or just learn more about you and what you do?
Yeah, so you can visit our website at www.givetruewater.org. We're all over social media. We have a great YouTube channel as well. Go check out a lot of our videos if you want to dive into some of the technical stuff. We have a couple of great videos on our YouTube channel. You might have to dig into the archives a little bit, but that show a really cool walkthrough of our approach and our first project as well in Monte Castillo that I mentioned. We have a really cool walkthrough of the whole system. They're simple systems, but they're impactful, they're lasting, they're sustainable change. Would love to chat with anyone who is interested in partnering with us and being a part of what we're trying to accomplish. We need, as you could imagine as a nonprofit NGO. We're always looking for donations and funding support. So if you know of any opportunities that would align with our mission, clean water to communities in need developing countries, point them our way, and you can reach out and have an impact in an amazing way, both financially, but also if you're just interested in learning more or even diving deeper with us as a volunteer. We have some opportunities there. You can go on a trip with us to Peru. We take one every year. Can really change your worldview. It definitely did for me when I went on my first trip to a developing country. So, yeah. There you go, Jeremy.
Cool. I will put some of those links in the show notes. And then to wrap up, we always talk about effective communication. Do you have one piece of advice that we can all benefit from around communication?
I think it's maybe trite and oversaid, but it's so true, and it's evident no matter which way you look, both in personal relationships and in business. Communicate, communicate, communicate. You cannot communicate too much. And then one of the things I would add to that is don't be afraid to ask questions. And I had a former supervisor. If he ever listens to this podcast, he'll appreciate the shout out. I'm not going to mention his name, but he used to always say there's no such thing as a bad question. The only bad question is a question not asked. And I think that goes both ways for us as leaders of our team that we're leading, recognizing that in many ways we're supposed to be in the trenches with them, like don't place ourselves above them and learn from them as we invite them to learn from us. And that creates that really healthy dynamic as an organization, and then encouraging that same mentality in those that we're leading to not be afraid to ask questions. And that's something I really harp on with our team, whether they be on our paid staff or a volunteer or just, somebody that's helping us out with a single event or a single activity. Don't be afraid to ask questions, because when we are, then that's usually when the balls get dropped.
I love it. There's probably not one episode where I don't encourage people to ask more questions, because it's just so hard to know everything and understand where other people are coming from without asking. So That's a great piece of advice. Jacob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. I really enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing when this episode drops.